Okay, good afternoon everyone. Welcome along to this sales presentation for GoConnect for Panasonic. Brand new presentation, updated for the soon-to-be released version 2.5. So lots of new bits and pieces in there relating to that new version. I guess there's kind of two audiences today. You're either completely unfamiliar with the product altogether and you're looking for the full sales presentation, so we'll be able to do that with you today. You may actually be familiar with the product already, just looking for sort of an update or maybe a refresh, and we'll be able to do that for you as well. There might be some detail here that you've seen already, but you never know, you might learn something new as well. So as I say, it's the full sales presentation. It isn't just the what's new in 2.5. Got my colleague Javier online with me as well. I can't answer any questions during the webinar. It's quite a long webinar anyway, so we can't sort of take questions in stream, but there's a little question answering or asking facility on your GoToMeeting webinar panel, so you can ask whatever questions you want, and my colleague Javier will answer those on the fly. We'll have a quick look at them at the end and see if there's anything that needs to be sort of addressed to the whole audience, but feel free to ask those questions as you want to. It's going to take about an hour to get through this presentation. It's quite a long one. Hopefully you'll find some value from it. I say we've added all the new 2.5 stuff in, so we're a little bit unsure of times, but I'll try and keep it as close to the hour as possible. Let me just get rid of my little fancy clock that everyone's been looking at for the last few moments. Right, okay, so beginning off, just a quick introduction to who we are, first of all, just in case you're not familiar with us. We're Mondigo, formed in 2001, based in Peterborough in the UK. We've sold over 3 million desktop licenses worldwide now, so we're doing rather well. We specialize in CTI, computer telephony integration, and we work with various partners, including Panasonic, and we also work with sort of CRM and other software companies as well. We're a silver partner of Panasonic, and we've got a proven expertise in the integration of phone systems with software applications. That's really our bag. That's what we do. GoConnect is one of our key products for Panasonic. It's a multi-platform CTI product. I'll explain what I mean by multi-platform a little bit later. But essentially it's designed to help your users, your customers, make the optimal use of their phone system. So the individual users will be able to control their handset from their computer, which is rather nice. And they can also integrate that functionality in with any CRMs or other applications that their company may be running. We'll look at the integration in much more detail a little bit later on. Just from a kind of a schema point of view and how this actually hangs together, nothing particularly complicated. You have the phone system there in place already, with the various extensions hanging off the phone system. What you have, as far as GoConnect is concerned, is each individual user on their PC or on their Mac, they have a client installed. That client talks across IP to a GoConnect server, which itself is connected via CSTA over IP to the actual phone system. You also have mobile users as well. We'll talk about the mobile element a little bit later on. So users could be desk-based on a PC or on a Mac, or they might be out of the office mobile users. That's kind of the way the whole system hangs together. That's about as technical as we get on this sales presentation, but it gives you an idea of how things hang together. Benefits-wise, I'm going to give you a nice live demonstration which will hopefully be much more meaningful than a bunch of words on the screen telling you what the benefits are. But just in terms of a summary, what it's going to give your customers is a much more professional and intelligent handling of their incoming calls. It will speed up the process of finding a number to dial and dialing the number. So if you have customers that do a lot of outbound dialing, they'll be very interested in GoConnect. And also improving the collaboration between all of the users, all the GoConnect users, whether they're in the office or with their mobile users as well. As I say, lots of fancy words, but I'm going to show you the product and sort of show you live what those benefits actually are. Mention that we're on the verge of releasing 2.5, may even be today that 2.5 is officially released, but it's certainly going to be this week. Lots of new features in 2.5. We're going to go through all of these. Will have a mention somewhere in the sales presentations. We're not going to miss any of those out. And some of them are limited to certain versions of the client, as I'll mention as we go through. But that's just a quick summary of everything that's new. So you can see we're being rather busy adding new things into 2.5. We're going to begin our tour with the PC client. First point to note is if you are familiar with the product, you'll note straight away we have another version of the client. So there was the Office and the CRM versions. We now have an Office Plus, which kind of sits between the two existing versions. That's new in 2.5. Now, all of the versions of the client have integration and functionality that's kind of shared across everything I'm going to show you today. Pretty much is within the main, within all of the clients, available through all of them. So the basic call control, for example, and that kind of stuff is all in all of the clients. Also integration as standard into Outlook, Lotus Notes and Google Contacts, and some national directories as well. So again, that cuts through all of the versions. Where things start to change a little bit though is that the Office Plus version has some additional functionality. Some of the stuff that's been added in 2.5, like the preferred device and the combined presence screen that I'm going to show you a bit later. They're available only in Office Plus and going up the range in the CRM version as well. So some things I'm going to show you that are new in 2.5 that aren't in the base Office version of the PC client. Once we get into the full integration, that's the CRM version, which we'll look at a little bit later. So let's do a live demo rather than bore you with lots of PowerPoint slides. I'm going to just show you the basic functionality first of all. Apologies to people that are already familiar with the product, but just as we have some people on that haven't seen the product before, we're just going to go through the basic demo first of all, and then I'm going to show you some of the new bits and pieces in 2.5. So I've got my client running already, so I'm a user of GoConnect. I've got my client running on my PC or on my laptop or even on my Mac. I right click on the little icon, it brings up my system tray menu. There's a whole bunch of different menus and interfaces available within GoConnect. First place I'm going to take you though is the address book. Now this address book is actually included within the product, so it's nothing to do with the CRMs or other integration. It's an address book that's available to all users within within that user community of GoConnect, and they can use it as a shared address book, so they can have their company contact information in here. And pretty obviously you can put in either 01733 if you want for searching for numbers, and it'll find a match on that. And you can also search on things like names, etc. as well, so you can find all the companies that have the word Abbey somewhere in the name. So this is a shared address book that all the users have access to. It's not designed to replace a CRM in any way. As you can see, the actual fields that you have available are fairly limited, but it's kind of there as a basic shared address book in case the customer doesn't have an existing CRM that they want to integrate into. But it's quite a nice, it's got some quite nice sort of features in there that you can add in, things like notes on a particular contact, for example. So that's the shared address book, and obviously by nature you can actually click to dial any of these numbers. We'll look at click to dialing a little bit later. The reason I've shown you that first of all is to kind of make a bit sense of the way the integration works. Now rather than me dialing, I'm going to dial out a little bit later, but I'm just going to imitate an incoming call. Let me just type that in. So I've got a call coming in, and essentially this is the sort of first example of the integration into applications. So a phone number has come into my extension, or a phone call has come into my extension. The phone number has been checked in my integrated applications. In this particular case, I've just looked in my shared address book, but it could be ACT or Microsoft Dynamics CRM, for example, if that integration has been switched on. I haven't answered the call yet, but it's already told me who it is who's calling me. If I hover over the little pin icon, it shows me the little note that I had on there as well, so a bit more information about that particular contact. If you want more information, there's a Show Contact Pop button, so if I just pop that, it brings that contact record up straight away. So this is what I was saying earlier about intelligent professional call handling. As your customers receive their incoming calls, they can now handle those calls in a much more effective way. They know who it is who's calling them before they've even answered the phone. And at this point, you can even deflect the call off. So if it's somebody calling you that you don't really want to speak to, you can push that off to one of your colleagues. I push all my calls to Javier. If you answer the call, there we go, the actual icons change, and you can do things like consulting with your colleagues, transferring calls through to your colleagues. You can still pop the contacts as well, the contact record as well if you want to. If you actually click on the preview window, it brings up a larger phone window, and what we tend to find is that existing customers tend to use the little preview window. It's less intrusive, sits down in the bottom right hand corner, and it's just little icons that you can control. New users sometimes prefer to have this one. It's actually got the same stuff on the screen. Any difference is the icons are labeled up. So some new users prefer to use that. But either way, you can use one or the other, whichever you prefer. Now with the actual call in place, what you can also do is bring up your presence screen. So in this particular scenario that we've got, I've got Abby Produce ringing me, asking me questions that I don't know the answer to. the natural thing I want to do is ring one of my colleagues and ask them a question that Abby have asked me. I was originally going to call Ian Deacon, but I can see from the presence window that Ian's actually in a meeting. So this is a further example of that professional handling of incoming calls. I'm not going to waste my time, and more importantly, I'm not going to waste my customer's time, Abby Produce, ringing somebody that's actually in the meeting. I'm just wasting everybody's time in doing that. So the present screen shows me, who's connected, who's online, who's on the phone, who they're talking to. So I can be a much more professional way of handling those incoming calls. Instead of talking to Ian, I can see his colleague Wendy is in the office and online as well. She's not on the phone at the moment, so I can consult with Wendy. So I can just put my caller on hold. I'm ringing Wendy. She'll answer the phone in a moment, and then I can ask Wendy the question, and potentially I might pass the caller through to Wendy, so I can complete the transfer process, push the call through to Wendy, or I may choose instead to just cancel the call down. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. Just pull it back up again. Let's cancel the call down. Hang on a moment. There we go, and hang up the call. There's an example of the call handling and the use of the presence screen. We saw earlier that Ian was in a meeting. Every GoConnect user can set their meeting and their availability status. We're going to look at availability status a little bit later. And that's where the actual status was set. Another example that's quite a useful one is picking up calls. So I've got a colleague, Patrick Mace, who works with me. I can just imitate a call coming in on Patrick's phone by actually dialing in myself. Normally it would be somebody else dialing in. So you can see on the present screen that Patrick's phone is ringing. I can just click on Patrick's name and pick up the call from there. So users that are in the office, not necessarily familiar with the phone system and which buttons to push to pick up a call, they can very quickly pick up calls from the present screen. Having picked up a call, what you would naturally then do is maybe leave Patrick a note to tell him that you've received a call, taken a message for him. Rather than leaving a paper note, what you can do now is you can just send a message. So there's a messaging system in GoConnect as well that allows GoConnect users to send and receive messages, just like text messages, for example. So a nice messaging system available in there as well. In terms of dialing, we can also speed up the dialing process. Just close the presence down for a moment. So a couple of places you can dial from. You can just dial straight from here if you wanted to. If I wanted to ring an extension number, I could just ring Wendy straight off of there, 202. I can do searching from here as well. So that search I did earlier for Abby, I can actually start the search here rather than going into the address book, and it ends up with the same result. It's done my search, and there are my numbers that I can dial straight from. If I want to dial, I can just dial the number, and it's identified who it is, and it's dialing out for me. That's an example of the click to dial. I can also find my recent list. So that shows me the people that I've most recently dialed. So I might want to ring somebody back from 5 minutes ago. I can very quickly find their number and dial. And I've also got a call history as well that shows me all my inbound and outbound calls. There's pages and pages of that. It also shows missed calls as well. So if I'm in a meeting and a call comes in and I miss it, if the number is recognized in my integrated applications, it will actually show me who it was who called me. If it's a number that's not recognized, it'll put a location in there. If I click on the location, it then opens up an empty contact record, and I can probably fill that in. Maybe at the end of the day I'll look at my call history list and fill in the missing ones that spoke to me today that weren't in my address book, and I can add them into the address book. So that's a sort of a rather quick but hopefully effective demonstration of the way the product works. It can speed up outbound calling, the finding of that phone number and the dialing of that number. It can make the incoming call handling much more professional, and hopefully you can see from that present screen the way it can sort of help users collaborate. You can see if your colleagues are online on the phone and available to take calls, etc. So that's the sort of base demonstration, if you like. I've got a few slides now just to quickly show you some of the other bits and pieces that are a bit harder to show on a demonstration. Forwarded calls is a good example of that. So that little preview window that came up a little bit earlier, you can set your availability to forward your calls to one of your colleagues, and that's exactly what's happened here. So I've got a call that's coming on my laptop, but I can see the original caller was ringing Wendy on 202. She's got her forwarding on and forwarding her calls to me. She didn't tell me that, but I can see that now. So when I answer the call, I know who it is who's calling, and I can actually answer the call much more professionally. I can say, "Hi, this is Phil Driver speaking. My colleague Wendy is not available at the moment. How can I help you?" And if I want to know a little bit more about who it is who's calling, I can pop their contact record as well. That's a nice example of the professional call handling. Some other bits and pieces that are a little bit harder to sort of demonstrate. Focus dialing is a way of implementing click-to-dialing pretty much in any application that may have a phone number in it. I've actually cheated and I've got a little contact record just set up here, not a contact, an appointment set up. So I've got a test conference call. I've got a phone number in there in a particular field. In my configuration, in my dialing, if I switch on my focus dialing option and I just save my client, it'll update the client. What I'll then do is, if I get the focus on the field that contains a phone number, it'll just transpose a dialing icon. I can just click on that and it'll dial the number for me. Okay, so that's an example of focus dialing, and that's pretty much sort of a sledgehammer. Oops, just hang that up. That's pretty much a sort of sledgehammer approach to adding click-to-dial into applications. Just close my Outlook down so I don't get any emails coming in. So that's sort of one way of getting click-to-dialing into any application. You can literally, as long as the field has a phone number like in it, and it has the focus, it'll offer you the click-to-dial facilities. A little bit more targeted than that is in-application dialing, where you can teach the client where a particular phone number field might exist in an application. In this particular case, it's ACT. So there's a little way that when you do the configuration of the client, you can say, well, that's the phone field. I want to put a little phone dialing icon next to that particular phone field. That's a little bit more targeted. That prevents you sort of having the focus on all of the fields that may contain sort of phone number-like values. There's another feature as well called web page dialing, which is a similar sort of thing. And what it does, I've got a web page open already somewhere. Here's my list of plumbers in London. If I switch my web page dialing on, it'll look for phone number-like numbers of a certain value, up to a certain number of digits and a certain start digit, and it'll turn them into hyperlinks. If you click on the number, it will automatically just dial that number straight out for you. So it turns the web page into automatic sort of phone number dialing. So if you have a client that does lots of web research, they're looking on web pages, finding phone numbers, and then dialing, that could speed up that dialing process quite significantly. That's another feature, web page dialing. We also have one called clipboard dialing. If you copy a phone number into the clipboard, it will. I haven't actually got. Oh, I haven't got it switched on. It will automatically recognise that it's a phone number, and you can actually dial the number from there as well. So that's known as clipboard dialing. Lots of features available that you can switch on there. Most of those are available in this client configuration. I popped that up a little bit earlier. So in my dialing section in my configurator, you can see these options that I had switched on. So each individual client, as you install on their PC or on their Mac, you can switch this sort of functionality on or off on a client user by user basis. Some users may want it, some may not. You can also control some of the other features with a facility called security policies. With that, you set up a security policy, you add users into that policy, and then you either enable or disable certain functionalities. So, for example, you might want certain users to be able to have access to the address book, but not to be able to edit the address book. So they've only got kind of read-only access. Or you may want to disallow the messaging from certain users. You don't want them sending messages around. So you can sort of set up the controls in the way that is most appropriate for that particular user group. And while we're on the subject of users, just a quick mention of the Active Directory integration, which was introduced in 2.4, which allows you to create GoConnect user accounts using the information in the client's Active Directory. So they've got users set up in Active Directory already. They've probably even got their internal and external phone numbers and department information in there. Well, we can get that information out of Active Directory and create GoConnect user accounts. So rather than creating those accounts manually, you can actually create them using the Active Directory integration. You can actually send information back the other way as well. You can populate information from the GoConnect user account back to the user's Active Directory account as well. Okay, that's all pretty standard stuff. If you're familiar with the product already, that's pretty much everything that you probably knew already. What's new in 2.5? Quite a few new little bits and pieces. The first one is the positioning of the preview window. If I just do that dialing again for a moment, close my configurator down. So we'll just have an incoming call, an outgoing call. So naturally, so far, the preview window has always been positioned in the bottom right-hand corner. You can now, though, move it to wherever you want to move it to. There's a quadrant sort of setting that you can drag it to. So you drag it into any one of the 4 quadrants, and then when you just let it disappear for a moment, let it close down. There we go. And then when you rehover it, it'll actually put it into the top left-hand corner, or the bottom left-hand corner, top right, or bottom right-hand corner. So wherever you drag it, whichever quadrant you drag it into, when you then redisplay it, it then shows in the far extreme of that quadrant. Some users have requested this; they prefer it to be in the top left-hand rather than the bottom right-hand corner. So that's sort of repositioning of the preview window. You can also dock the presence screen. Now I can't demonstrate this because this is available only on Windows 8 systems, and I'm running on a Windows 7 laptop. But essentially you can size up, once you've normalized the presence window, you size it up to the size you want it to be. When you maximize it, it then parks it over on the far right-hand side of your screen, and then everything else that you display on your screen through any interface is then sort of parked up to the sort of the far left extreme of the docked presence window. So you can have your presence window displayed all of the time without things hidden underneath it, because everything just sits naturally to the left of the presence screen. A few other sort of cool controls and things we've added. The address book, you can now do that consulting. So when I consulted with my colleague earlier, that consulting is also, and transferring of calls is also now available from the address book. So you can be consulting with an external contact rather than an internal contact. That's quite nice. And there's also an email facility now. So within the presence screen, if you click on a user's name, as well as being able to call them and send them messages, you can also send them an email address, an email as well. Their user account on GoConnect would need to have an email address in there for that function to actually work. And essentially it just opens up your Outlook, opens up a new email and puts that person's email address in the to box. One of the biggest changes in 2.5 is a new screen on the presence screen. If I just bring my presence screen up, and what we have now is a new combined screen. So we had extensions and users before, and we now have a new combined screen. And the key difference of this, first of all, you have the circular icons are extensions, and the square icons are users. If a user has more than one device associated with them, there's a little plus sign next to the user's name. If I just click on my name, and you see I've actually got a desk phone as extension 204. I've got a virtual soft phone, which is a virtual extension 304, and I've got mobile set up as well. I've got GoConnect Mobile, which we're looking at a bit later. I've got that set up as well on extension 504. The idea of this, though, is that the users can set their preferred device. So on my client, I've got a new preferred device option that I can set. So I can say which is the device on which I want to receive incoming calls, or even make outgoing calls as well. So if somebody calls me through the present screen, it'll actually ring me on the device that I want to be my preferred device. You can see it's set at 204 at the moment. If I change my preferred device to my mobile, and the display gets updated to 504. My availability still displays in the same way, but it means that I can switch the control over where that where that call goes out from, or where the call comes in to. So that's what's known as preferred device, which is shown on that screen there. You can set that value in various places. I showed you on the system tray client menu. You can also do it on the present screen. At the top of the present screen, you can set it there, and I think, if I'm right in remembering, it's also on the address book as well. Yeah, down the bottom left-hand corner, you can set your preferred device in the address book as well. So lots of places you can set the preferred device. One thing to know, though, or to mention, though, is that regardless of which preferred device you set, your preview window will still show up on your client when an incoming call comes in, whether it's coming in on your mobile or your desk phone or your soft phone. So it will still display that, so you can still see on your computer that a call is ringing, even though the call itself might be ringing on a different device. So that's what's known as sort of preferred device caller preview. We've extended the availability side of things in GoConnect now. You may have sort of spotted that when I was in there earlier. So there's various settings that are available now that you can set in terms of working away and a break. So we've extended the descriptiveness of your availability, of the client's availability. And we've also introduced some new auto-sense availability settings as well. There's one that sets whether or not you're in an online meeting. So if you start up a GoToMeeting webinar or TeamViewer meeting, it also supports Lync call and WebEx and Skype calls. It will automatically then set your GoConnect availability as being online meeting. You can set up another setting that says when you're away from your desk. So when your PC goes dormant for a while, you can set a particular value and then it will automatically then say that you're away from your desk. And you can set your outside working hours as well. So go into your calendar, work out what your normal working hours are, and then outside of that, it will then display your availability as being outside working hours. All of that is controlled in your configurator, in your activities section. Some of the configurator has changed. If you're familiar with a configurator from 2.4, some of the screens have moved around. There's an activities page now, so you can switch on or off the detecting of the meeting software. You can switch on and say how long you want to set your PC to be dormant before it goes into inactive status, and you can also lock or say what status you want to be displayed if your computer is, if your screen is locked as well. From Outlook point of view, familiar with the Outlook status, so whatever your particular calendar status may show, the various settings like free and busy and tentative, they still work through to the GoConnect availability statuses. So we've got things like meetings and working away and not of work, so they all kind of map to the Outlook settings. While we're talking about Outlook, brief mention of the calendar integration introduced in version 2.4. The problem, or not the problem, but the design of the standard Outlook integration required that the user's client PC was running and that the GoConnect client was active on that PC and talking to the GoConnect server, which is okay if they're an office-based person, but if they're out on the road they may not be switched on and connected, whereas the calendar integration, the Exchange Calendar integration feature, means that we can get that information from Exchange Calendar rather than from the user's own sort of Outlook settings. So therefore we can display users' availability statuses based on their calendar settings, but getting that information from the server rather than the user's PC client. We've also introduced a concept of availability-based actions in 2.5. Best way to describe that is to show you. So in the availability section, what we have now, we have all these new availability statuses, and what you can now do is you can now set an action based on when you enter that status and when you exit that status. So putting it quite simply, for example, on a meeting, when you go into a meeting, you can now add the setting to say, okay, well, when I go into a meeting status, I want to forward my calls to my mobile. Right, and you can literally set that kind of thing up for all of the different statuses when you enter the status and when you exit the status as well. So I'd set up my meeting one to go to, send it to my mobile when I go into my meeting, and then back to my desk phone when I come out of my meeting, for example. And you can set things like DND, etc. There's quite a few things that you can actually set on each of those individual statuses. If you're familiar with BusyLight from Quando, you'll be pleased to know that we support that now as well. It's just basically just plug and play. So the GoConnect availability status or statuses now reflect on the BusyLight in the various colors, the green and the red and the flashing, etc. If you're not familiar with BusyLight, check out busylight.com. You get the information there on that particular product, but we support that now. And one final thing to mention on the client side before we move on is online help has also been added in version 2.5. So for example, when you're in your configurator, looking at your telephony section as an example, every screen has now got a little question mark in the top right hand corner. If you click on that, it will take you into the online help system and straight to the screen that you're on. So it's context sensitive. You can obviously navigate around the other screens if you want to, but it takes you to the screen from where you click the question mark. So we've done away with the PDF manuals and we put all of the help in a much more usable place online. You can click straight on the screen that you're on and it will take you to that relevant piece of help information to get you your help as quickly as possible. That's pretty much it for the PC client side of things. I spent sort of half an hour showing you that. Now, a lot of the functionality in the product and the other platforms cuts through as well. So some of the things I've shown you already are actually relevant on the other platforms as well. So the Mac client, for example, the call control, the presence, the chat, the history, the browser dialing, clipboard dialing, all those features that I showed on the PC client, they're all available on the Mac client. The only real difference is there's no Office Plus client on the Mac side. You have the Office version and the CRM version. Both versions support integration into the Apple Address Book and Click to Dial, etc. And then the CRM version supports integration into the Enterprise Edition of Salesforce. There's not as many applications on the Mac side for the integrations there are on the PC side. There's a page on the website that tells you the sort of comparison between the Mac and the PC. And we also have the mobile client, slightly confusingly called GoConnect Mobile sometimes. The actual GoConnect Mobile is for Android devices, and then the Unified Communicator is for iOS devices, iPhones, iPads, etc., and also for Windows Phone as well. If you haven't seen GoConnect for a while, you may have missed that, but we now support Windows Phone as well. On all of the devices, essentially what you get then is a presence screen, just like you had on the PC side, so you can see everybody's status, etc. You can dial users from the presence screen. You can set your availability from here, so when you're out on the road you can set your availability in the same way. It may be that you are actually available. You might be out of the office because you're visiting customers, but you might be between meetings, so you can set your availability to show you that you're available to take calls right now, and then 10 minutes later you can set yourself as being in a meeting or out of office. So you can override your availability status. You can also block calls as well that are routed through the phone system. You can participate in the messaging in the same way through your mobile device. And you can also do things like dialing Office extensions. So you can dial users directly through Deezer or through the auto attendant. So you can dial your colleagues directly from the mobile device. And you can also dial external contacts as well, because by having the GoConnect Mobile on your mobile device, you also have access to the shared address book. So what that means is that you don't have to put all of those local contact information on the actual phone itself. You haven't got to copy that information onto the phone itself. If you've got GoConnect on the phone, then you have access to the shared address book, and you can dial users directly from there. You can actually dial through the phone system using dial through, and that can obviously reduce calling charges as well by making those calls through the phone system rather than through the phone's own dialer. On inbound calls, if you take calls coming through, if you twin the mobile up to the phone system, to a virtual extension on the phone system, then the original caller ID is retained. So you get an overlay like the one on the screen here. So you get the same kind of sort of caller ID that I showed you on the PC demo. You get to see who it is who's calling you, and the sort of the connection into the integrated application, the shared address book. And the good thing about that, though, is that what you don't get, because the calls are coming through the phone system, if you have missed calls, for example, you don't get missed calls from the phone system. It does actually show you who the originating caller was, so you can see that who's actually trying to call you rather than it being the phone system itself, the number being displayed. The Unified Communicator, pretty much the same as the Android side of things. There are some subtle differences. There's a page on the website that goes through the differences in the different platforms, but essentially it's the same thing. The functionality on there is pretty much the same for Apple and for Windows phones as it is for the Android side of things. One other client to mention before we move on to some of the other things is the Attendant Console. This is a different kind of client, still installed on a user's PC generally, but this client user, you can have more than one if you want to, but generally there's one person that has this. They can monitor their own phone, obviously their own extension, but they can also monitor the ICD queue as well. If the phone system is configured in the right way, then calls to their handset, to the operator's handset, can be answered in any order, which is quite a preferable thing to have. And they can also monitor other people's extensions as well. So what you're setting up here is a potential sort of boss secretary type of feature, where you can be answering calls on behalf of somebody else's or on somebody else's extension. So they have a different client to the standard PC user. This is just a screen grab of an Attendant Console. On the left-hand side, you can see their incoming calls, the call that they're currently connected to, and also their held calls as well. On the right-hand side, they've got various displays that they can kind of tailor to their requirements, but you can see all of the different extensions, or you can group them up and you can look at them in different ways through different windows, etc. But they've also got the contacts and the history and the messaging facilities that the standard PC and Mac clients have as well. So it's kind of a GoConnect user with extra functionality in terms of the attendant, the operator type functionality there as well. So you may have some customers that might be interested in that. One new thing added to Attendant in 2.5 is the ability to have scripting on screen, so that when a call comes in on a particular DDI or DID number, then you can have a script appear, and then obviously the operator can then answer the call using that particular script. Particularly interesting in environments where you've got attendant users answering multiple calls for different clients, for example, multi-tenant environments, that kind of thing. Let's have a quick look at application integration. We've seen most of this already in terms of the previewing of the caller ID, the popping the caller's information on screen, searching for contacts, seen that as well, and the click to dial as well. So when we talk about application integration, we're not talking about that little focus dialing I showed you earlier that just put the little dialer next to a phone number. That's just standard within the basic client. You can do that for any application. But if you want this functionality, then you're into the CRM version of GoConnect, for the actual integration itself. Now that may be into standard CRM applications like ACT and Dynamic CRM, etc., and it could be into things like social media as well. So something I couldn't really demonstrate on my laptop is if I do a search with my integration in full flow. So I'm looking for Huffman. It's looking in my shared address book. It's looking in my Outlook contacts list, and it's also looking in my integrated application, which happens to be Sage. So that searching I did earlier can be one consolidated search across all of your integrated applications, and then you can click to dial from any of those. If the phone number comes in on an incoming call, it will show you, the ability to pop those contact records as well. So that's what the integration is all about. We support about 20, I think it is at the moment, standard products for the integration side of things. If you go on the GoConnect website, I think I've got it open somewhere. Here we are. Go on the integration section on the GoConnect website, and you'll see a list of all of the products that are currently supported from an integration point of view, all listed down the left-hand side. And we also support advanced integration as well. If you have a customer that uses an application that's maybe industry specific, it may not be a household name, but it's very well known within that particular industry, there's a good chance that we may have come across that application already, and we may well have built some sort of integration into that application for a previous client already. If you check the by industry section on the website, there's a list of those applications up at the moment. If you come across a client that has an application that we haven't seen before, there's an online process that you can go through to request that we look into integrating into that application. It's called the Application Integration Request Process, and the idea of that is that you provide us with information about the product and the vendor. We contact the vendor and we start the discussions in terms of can we integrate with your particular product. Usually the vendors are quite happy for us to do that, and the discussions go quite well. But we are at the mercy of the vendor, so if they're not interested in that, then we can't carry that application forward or that integration forward. The difference really, the subtle difference between the first screen, these are ones that we integrate with and we continue to maintain that integration. So we guarantee that if we say we support that version and future versions, then we will support those. With the advanced integration, we tend to integrate and set that and get it running. But then if we need to then look at another version of that integration, we'd have to sort of go back around the process again. So we can't guarantee that immediately we will always be supporting newer versions of these integrations. We sometimes have to sort of revisit that integration. A quick word on social networking. I haven't sort of displayed this in the demonstration, but the idea of this is that particularly for Facebook, if the phone number comes in and we recognize the phone number, we find a contact record matching up with that phone number. If that contact record has an email address, then we'll search the user's Facebook group to see whether or not we can find a match for that email address. And if we can do that, then we'll display the incoming caller's profile photo, and we'll also put up a Facebook icon, and they can then pop that and pop the caller's Facebook record as well. That's kind of handy sometimes in things like human resources, recruitment, that kind of area, where you very quickly want to pop the person's Facebook record. It also works on LinkedIn and MySpace, but in that context it looks through the whole community of LinkedIn and MySpace rather than in the Facebook area where it just looks at the user's Facebook group or member list. And one last word on integration. We also have the possibility to set up sort of integrated integration with any particular application. Let me just show you a demo. Much easier to show you rather than explain it. So on the integration side, first of all, you can change what happens in terms of the interface when the phone rings, for example. You can say whether you want to immediately show the contact record. But what you can also do is you can add in additional integration. So for example, I can set up something here that says, okay, when I have an incoming call, or rather when the call is ringing, or I've got various choices I can pick, but when the call is ringing, whether it's inbound or outbound, so maybe just on incoming calls, internal or external, so maybe just external calls. So all incoming external calls when they're ringing, what do I want to have happen? I can run a program by just providing a program path. I can pass parameters through to that as well if I want to, or I can just put in here the address of a web page. So it could be that every time I get an incoming call, external call, I want to pop straight to a particular web page. Maybe it's a page where I fill in some information, for example, or it's the corporate website or something like that. So you can technically sort of integrate into an application part of the calling process. So again, it's another sort of layer or another possibility in terms of integration if your client is interested in that kind of thing. And then the last word on integration is for users that maybe have, or clients that maybe have a TAPI compliant application. We have a first-party TAPI client available. What that is a client that sits on the user's PC on the same PC as the TAPI applications client. So you've got a TAPI applications server, client running on the user's PC. You have our first-party client running on there as well. So there's no interface as such. There's no requirement for the GoConnect PC client on there. But the client, the TAPI client, talks to the GoConnect server, which then enables some of the telephony functionality. So essentially the TAPI client is enabling the PC to then monitor and control a single extension. So you're building in sort of call control into that TAPI client through that first-party TAPI client DLL, which installs on the user's PC. No requirement for Office or CRM. That's just a standalone client that can be installed. If you have clients that have more than one location, you've got a couple of options, and they have phone systems at both locations. Option number one is GoSite, and in this particular example, you may have multiple phone systems hooking into one single GoConnect server. So in our simplified version of this with two sites, at site number one we have the phone system talking to the locally hosted or the locally situated GoConnect server. You have a user community of GoConnect users at site number one. You have another site somewhere else, could be in a different county, could be in a different country, could be a different time zone, different language altogether, but that phone system hooks into the GoConnect server, and then you have a user community of GoConnect users at site number two. All of the users can then share presence and the address book and all of the other sort of functionality that's within GoConnect. So you have just the one GoConnect server and the two phone systems hook into that one server. There is some additional licensing required for that. We talk about the licensing on the pre-sales presentation, same time tomorrow, 2 in the afternoon. We're doing a pre-sales presentation on the licensing side of things. That's option one, GoSite. The other possibility is federation. And with federation, what you have is you have a GoConnect server at both of the locations. So rather than in example one where you have just the one server and you hook the two phone systems into the one server, with federation you have a local GoConnect server attached to the local phone system. You have local user community at the two locations, but the two servers communicate with each other. And what that allows is the user community to share the messaging and the presence. They don't share the address book. Each server has its own local address book, but the other functionality like presence and messaging are shared between the user community. The benefit of this one is that if the connection between the two servers goes down, the users at site number 2, in fact at site number 1 as well, still have GoConnect functionality. They can still talk to their local GoConnect server, so they can still have all their call control, and they can also have their presence and messaging with their own local users, whereas on the Go Site 1, if you lose a connection between Site 2 and Site 1, these users are kind of out in the cold a little bit. They've got no GoConnect functionality whatsoever. They can still make calls on their handsets, but they don't have the messaging and the presence, etc., because they have no connection to GoConnect whatsoever. So, you know, it depends what the connectivity is between the two sites. This one, though, they have the shared address book, whereas on Federation they don't have the shared address book. So it's kind of pros and cons for the two different versions of that. But if you have users that have more than one site, they may be interested in one or the other of those options. A quick word on Lync. We get asked about Lync more and more these days. It gets a little bit complicated, so I've got a couple of slides here just to try and clarify what's available within Lync. First of all, in the client itself, in the standard PC client, without having to switch anything on at all, if the user is running Lync 2013 or the Office 365 version of Lync, automatically, without having to switch anything on, they will have a call using desk phone option in their Lync client. Okay, that doesn't require the RCC gateway that I'm going to mention in a moment. Okay, it just requires the standard PC client to be running, but it doesn't require any special options to be switched on. So we call that Lync dialing, or call using desk phone. So that's one sort of part of the functionality. There is then an option in the PC client that you can switch on, which says update Lync state when on a call, and what that does, sorry about the messy screen grab, what that does is it shows in the Lync client if the user is on a call. So if their handset is busy, or if it's on DND, it'll show in a call or DND. Okay? And that can be switched on or off in the availability. So if you go into the user's configuration in the availability section, tick that on, save it, and that will switch that functionality on. Obviously they need to be running the Lync client as well. So again, that's nothing to do with the remote call control. That's purely within the PC client. So what that looks like sort of from a graphic point of view is you'll have your Lync client on the user's PC talking to the Lync server. You'll have the GoConnect client talking to the GoConnect server talking to the phone system. And that enables that functionality. All of the call control is done through the GoConnect client, with the exception of that call using desk phone, which could be done through the Lync client, but generally it's all done through the GoConnect client. The remote call control gateway is a different thing altogether. What it provides is the ability to have that call control through the Lync client, so you can make calls, transfer calls, forward calls, etc., all through the Lync client. The way that's set up, though, is you have the remote call gateway between the Lync server and the phone system. There's nothing installed on the client's PC. There's the Lync client, but there's no requirement for a PC GoConnect client to be running on the user's PC. So that's where the remote call control gateway comes in, rather than the standard functionality in the client. Okay, quick summary of benefits. I think you've sort of seen pretty much everything in terms of the core functionality of the product. Hopefully I've shown you the increased sort of customer satisfaction in terms of better call handling, professional call handling. If you've got customers that do lots of outbound calling, hopefully you can see the click to dial and the integration with the applications should speed that up quite significantly. And I think the main thing is the collaboration between the office users and the mobile workforce. That present screen now allows you to collaborate, communicate with your colleagues, to see where they are, when they're available, etc., etc. So I think there's plenty there in terms of benefits that you can show to your prospective customers. A few other bits and pieces as well. Everything I've shown you, pretty much everything I showed you on the demo, was available in the base Office client, with the exception of the the preferred device stuff and a couple of other new in 2.5 bits. But a fair chunk of it was in the Office client. So you can kind of use that client maybe as a sort of a bundled option within the phone system. Get the client using a few Office clients, get them sort of familiar with what GoConnect can provide to them, and use that to kind of drive the sale, and then maybe start to talk to them about integration and some of the other things they might want after that. But you can kind of sort of think about bundling that in the price, or at least a few licenses. Another nice thing is that on smaller systems, anything less than about 50 users, GoConnect Server will quite happily run on a shared server, so you don't need to give the client the impression that they need a brand new server running nothing else, and then they install GoConnect Server on there. If they've got a sort of print server or something else hanging around with some spare capacity, then GoConnect Server will quite happily sit on an existing shared server. A couple of other things just to mention before we wrap up. Software Assurance is our subscription and support program. 2 years available for the price of one if it's purchased during the initial sale. All of the products come with 3 months cover anyway, so that it doesn't affect the user's sort of 3-month warranty. And then there's additional reinstatement fees if it's not purchased within the first 3 months of the license purchase. There's details of Software Assurance on the website. Websites themselves, there's a few of them to show you. So the first one is the main GoConnect website, where I was earlier on. That's probably going to change fairly soon once 2.5 is up and running. So that's just the GoConnect CRM website. There's the accreditation website, and you need a login for this. I'm currently logged in here, and normally you'd be greeted with a login screen. If you don't have access to this already, you need to contact us so we can give you access to this, because this contains all of our sales presentations, technical presentations, any videos that we produce, information about future webinars, including the ones tomorrow, and also information on our Select Partner program as well, in terms of what the benefits of the Select Partner program are, and also the tests that you need to take in order to become a Select Partner. There's no cost involved in the Select Partner program, but essentially the only requirement is that one or more individuals at your company needs to take one of each of the 3 tests. So somebody at your company has to pass the sales one, the pre-sales one, and the technical test. I did one of these last week. It's just an online process. You go in and it's a multiple choice questions. There's about 40 questions that you answer. All pretty simple questions. They're not meant to be particularly difficult. It's just meant that you can sort of show us that you have the required knowledge of the product. So that's all the different websites. In terms of contacting us, if you've got any questions now, I'm going to leave the webinar open for a little while to give you the chance to put any additional questions in, and Javier and I will look at those in a moment. Alternatively, if you want to, you can just email us on webinars@mondigo.com. We'll pick those emails up and respond to those. In general, if you have sales inquiries, sales@goconnectcrm.com, and any technical inquiries to support@goconnectcrm.com. They're the standard contact points for the product. But if you've got anything particularly about this webinar that you wanted to ask, then webinars@mondigo.com is the right place to go. I'm just going to quickly check the questions section. Nobody's asked any questions at the moment. And what I'm going to do, it's 14:53 on my clock on my computer. I'm going to leave this webinar open until 1500, and that'll give you the chance. If you've got any questions, you can just type those questions in on the questions asking section on your GoConnect panel. And if you do ask any questions, then we'll ping an email back to you with the answers to those after the webinar. So if you're still on the webinar at 3 o'clock, you'll get booted off. You can leave now if you want to, but we'll boot you off at 1500. And then thanks for your time, and speak to you again soon.